We have a very fun and interesting show for you today, especially if you're a parent of a young child or you love children's books. International Children's Day takes place in April, so we thought it was the perfect time to talk to local authors of children's books. Killeen, Eluka Moore, and Larry Puzniak join me next on City Corner. Hi, I'm Thompson, and welcome to City Corner. As I said in the intro, we've got a very fun show for you today. We're going to talk to local authors of children's books, and I'm starting off the segment first with Killeen, who's the author and illustrator of Tillie and Clementine. So thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. It's great to see you, and thanks for letting me on to talk about the book.
Yeah, no, so this is a really fun book. I read it the other day, read it again this morning, and it's really neat. Tell me first, who is Tillie and Clementine?
All right, well, it is based, pretty much inspired on my two little nieces, Tillie and Clementine, and they're right now currently a 4th and a 1st grader here in the city, and so it's inspired by them and their crazy dad, my brother, Mike, and their sweet, loving mom, Annie. And so it's set in Benton Park, down in that nice old neighborhood down in the city, kind of in between Soulard and Lafayette Square. And it's just a silly bedtime story that's somewhat inspired by the made-up stories that a dad or mom will kind of make up on the spot for their kids. So that was
we've got some graphics that we're going to start taking a look at. So tell me, without giving away the whole story, it's kind of hard to ask that with children's books.
That's all right.
Because they're not that long. But let's start taking a look at some of the images.
Okay.
What is the story? I mean, you've just sort of given a summary, but what's it about?
Okay. Well, book one, subtitled Noises in the Night. So Tillie and Clementine is going to be a series, but book one, which we're looking at, is about the night that Mommy has to go to a neighborhood board meeting, which are pretty common, I think, in these historic neighborhoods. And so this is going to leave Daddy in charge for a few hours. So he is going to rise to the occasion after a little hesitancy. He's going to make the girls dinner, get them ready for bed, tell them a story, and then he locks himself out of the house. So,
which can happen.
Yeah.
Which can happen. And there's Benton Park where the story takes place and where your nieces actually live.
Right.
Okay, so go on. So Daddy locks himself out of the home.
Sure, but well, actually, before he locks himself out, we'll back up a little bit. He actually sits down to tell the girls a bedtime story. There's the scene where Mommy is making the announcement that she has to leave for a few hours. So they're all a little in shock at the prospect of being without her for a few hours, because they love her and they all, and so there's Daddy turning around to say, okay, let's go see what we can find in the fridge. And the girls and even the cat are still looking out the front, seeing Mommy go into the meeting. So, and there they are at the dinner table. Daddy has warmed up some leftovers in the microwave that he had first offered them, but they refused, and so he had to make them macaroni and cheese. And I'm finding that that's a yeah. repeating theme with the kids that I introduced the book to. They're like, I love mac and cheese.
Right, right.
And then we go into their bedroom there, which is quite messy, and they have bunk beds, which I had growing up in a big family. And so Daddy is going to tell them a bedtime story, and he's going to try to insert a little lesson or a moral in the story. The story is going to be about two princesses who themselves have a messy bedroom. And there they are. So the bedtime story sort of parallels the overall story in that, okay, so we have a Mommy and Daddy, and they have to go away to a royal board meeting, and they're leaving the girls in charge of the castle for the night, and they instruct them as they're leaving to be good girls and clean up their room and don't eat too much dessert.
Right.
So that's the instructions, and the princesses are not going to follow those instructions. What happens is they leave a big mess in their room, and they leave pudding bowls everywhere, and that attracts a dragon who lives in the woods nearby. And as we all know, dragons love pudding. So he smells the pudding coming from their bedroom. You can see the light on up there. And he is going to try to get up to their pudding. And the girls are going to get it together. They're going to pull all their toys and pudding bowls off the floor and throw them at this dragon who's trying to crawl up the side of the castle. All right, so that's the end of the bedtime
Right.
story. Now, Daddy kisses them goodnight, and he takes out the recycling, but in doing so, he locks himself out of the house. And there he is, locked out, and so he's got to figure out a way to get back inside. And what he's going to do is try to crawl up the side of the house, very much like the dragon was trying to crawl up the side of the castle. And the girls, Tillie and Clementine, who have that scary dragon story lingering in their head, they hear these noises outside their window, and they figure, well, that must be a dragon. So they gather up their toys off their floor and go to the window, and they throw them at Daddy, who they think is a dragon. So he gets clobbered by the toys, and then he falls down to the ground below and stumbles around back to the front of the house. And by that time, Mommy's home. And she's like, what are you doing out here? He says, oh, I locked myself out. So at the end, they go in. Mommy's got her keys to check on the girls. And their room is clean because they've thrown all the toys out the window. And Daddy's all clobbered, and his head is spinning. But she's like, well, good job, honey. You got him to clean up their room.
Right.
So, of course, they didn't really clean up their room.
It's very fun, and it's very cute. I mean, how did you get the idea to do this?
Well, again, these are inspired by my brother Mike's stories. A morsel of this story did come from one of his stories about a daddy being locked out, and I added on like the dragon part and kind of the setup and the sort of the resolution there. But
in terms of making it an actual book, to say, you know what, your stories to your brother are really good. I think I'm going to illustrate this and actually make it into a book and self-publish my book. I mean, where did you get that idea?
Well, I don't know. I guess for years I'd been off and on trying to be a syndicated comic strip guy, and I'd gotten close a couple times with some of the syndicates. So, and you can sort of tell that in this book, that it's got kind of a comic strip feel to it with the illustrations. And I guess I had gotten tired of sort of waiting for the approval of a syndicate or a publisher. So I'm just like decided I'm going to do this myself and self-publish and sell them locally and just be a fish in a pond and maybe, swim around and sell a few books. Because it's very doable, particularly nowadays with the internet, to promote yourself and get into local stores and stuff. And hopefully I'll be spreading out beyond St. Louis soon. Okay. So that's kind of how that...
Let's talk about the creative process, because when you illustrate, I always wonder when you see the sketches, you start off, on notebook, is that right?
Right.
And so we've got one of your images too.
Okay.
How long does that actual process take? Is it relatively quick?
Well,
like, do you sketch all your ideas first in a notebook and then you...
Exactly, yeah. So there's an image of one of my notebook sketches. So, I think like any writer or artist, you kind of do a quick sketch to get an idea and the composition of what you want to do. And that's sort of the fun, rapid process in the notebook form, because you're anything goes, and you're writing, you're kind of brainstorming. And then when you're happy with it, you formalize it. And here's a more formal sketch that I do on Bristol board. And then from there, I take out some ink, and I ink over it, and then I erase the pencil, and there you have that. So that's kind of cleaned up. And then finally, I scan that into the computer, and I go into Photoshop, and I color it. And there's the colored version. So it's that process takes a little bit longer, the inking and the coloring and everything. But it's fun, because it turns out to, nice, colorful.
So both as an illustrator and author, do you write the story first and then illustrate, or do you, as a visual creative mind, do you illustrate ahead of time in your mind and then sort of write along with it?
They kind of work simultaneously, because, and this was true with comic strips as well, I think a lot of times the illustration and the text complement each other. So sometimes you have something to say in the illustration that you can leave out of the text, and that's good for brevity's sake, which sometimes I'm not always great at. But and so you can communicate stuff in the illustration that's fun to do, and so I think of the illustration as part of the writing as well, so yeah, they do go hand in hand as you're composing.
Well, let's talk about the real life inspiration here. So you've got two nieces, Tillie and Clementine. You said they live down in Benton Park, and we've got a photo of you. So how is being an uncle now, and you've published the story about your nieces? What's their response to it? Do they think it's so cool that their name is on the cover of a book?
Yeah, in one sense, yeah, they're very happy and cool with it. And they're sort of, I don't know, they're sort of known a little bit, at least at their school. Like, hey, these girls have a book named after them. And I think some of their friends have asked, hey, can you get your uncle to get me in there, maybe as one of your friends? And so that's kind of cool. But on the other hand, they're a little bit like, well, doesn't everybody have a children's book written about them?
Right.
And so I've actually had them come with me to some events where there's like a book signing, like at an outdoor fair, and they'll sit next to me and sign books. And, you know, it's very like, to them, like, this is whatever, this is what you're doing. And they even get kind of bored with that.
Sure.
And they'll run off to the playground. And so
I want to say, we have an image too with your dad. Is it that correct that your whole family has sort of like creative, they're illustrators themselves or artists? Yeah,
amazingly. I'm the 7th of 8 kids, and we can all kind of draw. And so I don't know if that's genes or if it's just peer pressure that you just had to.
Was your father an artist?
He sort of was. He could paint. He you know, he just was a professional businessman. But and there he is reading to my brother Brian and me back in the 70s. And I think I'm on the right there, and it looks like I still have some chocolate on my face after dinner.
But reading the storybook. Now, you've presented this at schools. Tell me about that. I mean, what's the response been as you've gone about? Is it obviously positive, but what's it been like to go to the schools and read the book?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. What I do is sometimes I'll address just a single class, or sometimes an assembly of a few different classes gathered together. And, oh, there's one. And so it's nice. You can kind of plug into a projector and project the image big so that everyone can see, and whether it's a smart board or a projector or a TV screen. And I sometimes I'll do a presentation of some of my older drawings when I was the kids' age who I'm presenting to, and so they get a kick out of that, and they get a kick out of seeing pictures of you when you were a kindergartner or a 3rd grader or whatever. And but they enjoy the book, and you know, they laugh at parts in the book that I wasn't really aware that would be so funny. Like there's one page in the book where Daddy is helping change the girls to get them ready for bed, and the younger girl's tummy is kind of hanging out and showing, and they just think that's the funniest thing, you know.
Right, and then the parents laugh at the things of like having to make macaroni and cheese, because that's something that every parent has to do. Before we wrap things up, I did want to ask you, there's a photo of students in Africa, I believe, reading this photo. Tell me about that before we end things.
Oh, sure. Well, there's a couple in my parish who have this mission in Africa to get books out to several libraries, and I just, you know, I donated one to them, and then within a few weeks later they sent me this photo, of some kids at a library in Africa. I forget which country, but there it is. My book has made it to Africa before I have, which is fine. So I hope they like it, and you know, I hope they don't get the wrong impression of America by reading that, you know, these crazy kids.
No, I think this is great. Well, we look forward to the book number 2 as it comes along. And for those, and thank you again for being here. And for those of you at home, we've got the information if you want to go to the Tillie and Clementine website. It's there on your screen, tillieandclementine.com, or you can go to Dan's website where he's got information about his other illustration projects going on in his work. And so you can check out some more information there. But do stay with us, because we've got 2 more local children's book authors when we return with City Corner. Stay with us. I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome back to City Corner. For today's show, we're talking with local authors of children's books, and for this segment, I'm now joined by part of the creative team, I should say, of Kitchen Club Kids. I'd like to say the authors, but there's a whole team of you, right?
There is.
So I've got to ask this question. I mean, how do 4 people who are professionals in marketing and advertising come together to put together a children's book about cooking and sort of recipe adventure book? How does this come about?
It really just, friendships are forged over the years of working together, and you know what everybody is capable of. And then, you know, as life happens, everybody started having kids at the exact same time, and we were talking about how you balance work and family and how you get them involved and get them to try new things. And we all just kind of, all these interests aligned, and here we are.
So what's unique about this, I really like the branding of this, and of course the branding on this is very well done, is recipe adventure story. So Eluka, explain, what is it, a recipe adventure story, or that genre? I think this is the first time I've actually heard this.
Sure. So, I mean, the Kitchen Club Kids series, we do call the Recipe Adventure series because it uses cooking as a way to teach young children about basic counting, colors, food recognition, working on their problem solving, their critical thinking skills, while also promoting healthy eating habits at such a young age, as early as 2 years old. So each of the stories that we have in the collection is a recipe that's told in a traditional storybook format. And at the very end of each of the books, you have a real recipe that can be prepared by parent, child together and really celebrate that, spending that quality time together just in the kitchen.
So are you guys big foodies as friends and authors? I mean, are you guys big foodies, obviously? Because the choice could be, hey, we could tell a story about, we talked about that in the first half with Dan, just the dilemmas of being a parent or the funny things that happen about being a parent.
Sure.
But to talk about food and to focus on healthy eating really says something.
Sure.
You're definitely more of a foodie than I am.
Cooking has been a huge part of my life from when I was 6 years old on up, and now that I'm a parent, it's being able to share that love and that passion with my own son. And so for me, that's kind of where all of this cooking really comes from and how excited I am to be able to share that with other parents. And the importance of building a foundation and really making my son aware of the things he's eating from day one, so that when he becomes older and making his own choices, that it's just becomes second nature rather than a chore.
Right, right. Well, let's talk about the first one is End of the Rainbow Fruit Salad. Is that right? And we've got a photo of the cover of that. So tell me about this one. This is making a fruit salad. Obviously, a lot of colors, but explain to me what do families read when they open the book?
So basically, it's exploring numbers and colors, counting from 1 to 10. And then along the way, we introduce a lot of what you would expect to be very common fruits that all kids would know. But then we want to throw a couple things in there that introduce them to new things like a papaya and pineapple and, possibly blueberries, raspberries, things like that. Just so that they are aware of everything that's out there. And when you put it on their plate, they're not just throwing it off onto the floor.
Yeah, no, sounds like a good tool. We have a good tool to introduce them to numbers and to fruits and vegetables. I think we've got cherries and blueberries in this. I'm curious too, when you guys are putting this together, there's 4 of you, is that right, for your team?
Yes.
How difficult or maybe easy, how do you split up the work for something? How does it all come together?
Sure, it's a very collaborative effort. Again, as Larry mentioned, we all sort of have had a previous life together in professionally. And so we just kind of know how each other work. And so, everyone brings something unique to the table, and it really truly is a lot of fun. For me personally, it's great to be able to work on something that I'm so passionate about, but with such talented people that I get to do on a regular basis. So it's just special.
And sounds like a lot of fun. Now, the second one is the garden safari vegetable soup.
Yes.
So was it, when you came up with this one, was it already did you already have mapped out, okay, number 1's going to be this, number 2, is that?
We kind of had a blueprint of sort of what we wanted to do, and we knew it was just sort of which one do we want to lead with, and so we chose the fruits first, just was something that all kids love usually is the fruits. And
not the vegetables.
Not the vegetables. And so we knew that vegetables would be the next one. And then following would be our third book, which would be all about using your 5 senses to make bread, a basic bread recipe. So with Garden Safari, this time, very similar to the first book, they're going on a counting of safari to find assortment of fresh vegetables. And again, it's introducing things that are commented on, the carrots, the celery, tomatoes, but throwing in something unique. In this instance, it's blue potatoes. So who doesn't like blue food? But in this case, it's healthy for you. So
I'm going to honestly say I don't know if I've actually heard of blue potatoes before.
Yeah.
So
Most parents haven't even seen a blue potato before.
Yeah. And so that's thrown in for the vegetable soup?
It is. And it's actually, blue potatoes have a very high nutritional value compared to just regular potatoes. And that's something we also discovered as we were playing with the recipe and what is going to make it really unique. Because there's so many great vegetable recipes out there, but this puts our stamp on it.
So the recipe that's at the end of each book, it reflects what the story's been about.
Yes.
And you can make it. You can actually make that recipe all together.
Absolutely.
Normally in 10 easy steps.
Yep.
That's kind of the goal. So we take you on a recipe that's easy to prepare, and cooks of any caliber can really get in there and enjoy it, because you have to simplify it for kids age 2 to 5. Make sure that they can get active and get involved while they're there in the kitchen.
So speaking of, we were talking about with Dan, just sort of funny stories that happen with your kids. Both of you have children in the kitchen. You've done these, right? You've probably done them numerous times. Have there been some, has it gone smoothly?
Oh gosh, well, we could say sure, but
very smooth.
There's for me, with my son, he's a typical picky toddler, and just vegetables was just such a problem for us to get him to eat. But then when we introduced this, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, we hit the jackpot, because he loves the colorful illustrations and all that, and so he is kind of it's resonating with him. But at first he wants to kind of have nothing to do with any vegetables, and anytime we're like, let's go do something in the kitchen and try to make a soup or anything with vegetable, he was like not having it. So
So it's been, I mean, it's good. We were talking about off camera, just, you know, those instances when you're in the kitchen and you're like, don't touch that, or, you know, don't with the knife. But this is really a great introduction for that. Have you heard that a lot from people who've read the book or bought the book? Is that kind of what they're saying?
Absolutely. And the most important thing is knowing what's age appropriate. So you're not going to hand your kid a butcher knife and say, why don't you chop this up for me, dice up these onions so we can throw them into the stew. You know, that's not how it works. But you just start really simple. Give them things like let them pull the tops off the carrots, you know, or de-stem the grapes. Different little chores. And of course, all kids, no matter what age they are fantastic at taste testing.
Yeah.
That is one of their favorites. So I put my little guy on the counter and he's like right in the mix the entire time. And I swear half the stuff is going in his mouth.
Right. No, but this is a great way. I mean, that's a great example to say, you know, maybe, yeah, just separate this or do something. You're not handing them, you know, the shredder or,
right.
you know.
Stirring is another really easy task, of course, away from the stove. But, you know, if you're baking or whatever it is, or making the fruit salad, stirring is a very easy task that kids can do.
So I know that the third book, hasn't come out yet, but you briefly mentioned it. Tell me a bit more about it with bread, because that's quite interesting, and kneading bread and, you know, putting together something that's very hands-on for kids. But explain to me, if you can, how much you can reveal about it.
Making bread is definitely a sensory experience, and just there's so many things, because a lot of bread making is waiting as well. But you get them in there, they can touch it, and they can feel it. And the hardest part with the whole, you know, making sure we cover the 5 senses was how do you hear bread making? So that'll be the big secret reveal when we actually get into the book. But of course the smells, everybody has those memories from when they were young and maybe grandpa was in there making his homemade bread, and it brings you back to a time when everybody ate fresh from home. And you know, that's really one of the things that we're trying to drive home for people is you can cook at home, you know, you can make things with your family, and it's ultimately going to be so much healthier for them in the long run.
What do you see as sort of the long-term, not so much goal, but just projection, really, of Kitchen Club, like the whole series? I mean, is it going to be going into something outside of cooking? I mean, have you guys thought about that? I mean, it's a really clever idea because it serves a purpose, but what do you see happening?
Well, of course, we want to, first and foremost, continue to grow the series, you know, in terms of the books. But we've talked about merchandising. We've talked about apps. We've talked about, you know, a planner for mom and including a little shopping list for her, you know, things of that nature. So it's all, again, tying back to cooking, but getting outside of the traditional books that we've already established.
Yeah, no, that's an app that would be great. I noticed when I was reading when I was on your website, a lot of the responses, obviously from nutritionists to teachers, everything's been really positive. Tell me about how people have responded to this, from parents to educators, nutritionists. What are they saying?
Sure. You know, a lot of the moms are just so excited to be able to have a tool that not only teaches their children all the, you know, basics things that they would need, from building your vocabulary to reading to counting, et cetera, but the fact that they're promoting the healthy eating habits, you know, and especially at such a young age. You know, a lot of these parents are getting on the bandwagon about, you know, it's so important to set that foundation for life for their children, and making them aware of what they're putting in their mouths. So, you know, we're very grateful to have the opportunity to share this with so many parents and nutritionists, and, you know, and really get some really great, honest feedback on what we're doing.
Yeah, because I think about right now, like the sort of the landscape of literature, and there's stuff that includes food, but not so much. It's really an interesting concept, and it's a combination of a cookbook and a story itself, and it brings it all together. Sure. Where can people go? We want to know for more information. Where can they get your book?
Sure.
Visit us online, kitchenclubkids.com.
Okay, and go onto the site, and on the site too, you have some other information really about healthy eating and. Can you just elaborate on that?
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, we have all kinds of, you know, fun activities that, you know, from different schools that have used our book as teaching tools and talk about the different circle times and what have you. You know, we also like to talk about, you know, great recipes, other great recipes out there that you can certainly try with your kids. If you follow us on Facebook, you'll be able to see all kinds of fun treats that we like to put there and fun facts about healthy fruits and vegetables.
I have to, before we wrap things up, which one so far of the two is your son? Which is his favorite?
Garden Safari.
Oh, yeah?
Because he's on the cover.
Because he's on the cover.
And Larry, what about you?
Ironically, it's going to be End of the Rainbow Fruit Salad, also because he is on the cover.
Has nothing to do about
Right.
what they're
The
making.
story.
Kids are so into themselves these days.
Yes,
it's
they are.
unbelievable.
That's because we have authors putting their family, naming books after them and putting them on the cover. No, I love the concept. I love the idea, the illustrations and everything. It's so colorful and vibrant, and I really appreciate you guys being here to share information about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, and best of luck with the next book.
Thanks so much.
All right, well, thank you at home for joining us. It's been a fun show, and if you want to rewatch this, you can always check us out on our YouTube page. And for more information about City Corner and other things we have going on, visit us at stltv.net. Thanks again for joining us.